I ran to the lift and got an Uber back home. And I didn't go on a viewing for another like 2 months after that. I got told no so many times, especially by estate agents. No, it's our policy. We just don't do it. And the more I kept calling, I was kind of getting a bit fed up. So I was like, you know what, instead of hanging up the phone, let me say, okay, well, why don't you?
Welcome back to Luke's Properties YouTube channel. In this video, I'll be talking with one of my success students, Jasmine. Last month, Jasmine took on her first rent-to-rent serviced accommodation property in Leeds, and she's fully booked until next year. There's loads of tips and gems in this episode, so make sure you stay tuned and take some notes. And without further ado, let's get into it.
You know what? It's actually a funny question. Someone asked me the other day, how did I get into property? And I didn't really know what to tell them because it kind of fell on my lap. Your Instagram posts came up on my Instagram like 2-3 years ago, something like that. And I wanted to get into something where I could be a businesswoman, financially independent. I wanted to be that boss woman, and I knew that property was a really great industry to get into. But because I haven't got a history of it, or none of my family members are, business owners or in property, so it kind of seemed a bit overwhelming. But
Sure.
the idea of rent to rent, or even like rent to HMO, rent to service accommodation, seemed it didn't seem too hard to grasp. Like I could start with fairly low capital. Like I could start with under 10K. Obviously that's still a lot of money, but when you're talking about property, you kind of need a lot to start, and this seems fairly realistic.
Yeah.
And so one of these days I bit the bullet and I purchased your course, and then it was all from there. And funny enough, around the same time, my partner was going to get into the same thing. So he stayed in London, and the host of the Airbnb that he stayed at mentioned rent to rent, and if he wanted to get involved. And he mentioned it to me, and I said, oh yeah, don't worry, I've already got a mentor for that. And it all started from there, really. It's been a really, really long journey. And you think you know it through the theory. And then you start doing it, you're like, oh my God, I actually, practice is experience is the best, honestly. Like you think you know everything through the theory, reading everything, and you really don't until you're actually doing it. And I have to say, like, even though I was speaking to you a year ago saying, oh, why aren't I getting my, first rent to rent? Like, why is it so hard? Maybe it's just, not meant for me or whatever.
I remember.
Yeah. And to be honest, I never gave up. I always knew I was going to get it. It was really difficult. Seeing everyone else get one.
Yeah. You have those moments, don't you, where you doubt yourself. It's only natural to be like that.
Yeah, exactly. And, but yeah, I got one, and, yeah, like I said, experience is the best teacher. And we're here now, and you're not thinking about all the times that you didn't, you wish you had one, because when you got one,
you're there now. You've arrived.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me a bit about. So I think you mentioned London, but did you move to Manchester? Is that right, to get started?
Yeah. So I lived in Cheltenham, but and that's 3 hours south of here, so it's still around the Midlands area. So it's quite expensive, and it's not too touristy. So I knew I couldn't start there. The nearest city would have been Birmingham, and I was looking at HMOs in Birmingham. I did go on a few viewings around Birmingham, and then moving to Manchester, I was like, yeah, great, this is going to be easy. And
famous last words.
Yeah, because when I moved here, I didn't realize that the problem with Manchester is all of the buildings, or almost all of the buildings, have a head lease. You can't do short-term rentals. So I was like, oh, you're kidding me. I've moved to Manchester, and it was a bit of a tricky one. So yeah, I moved to Manchester mainly for career opportunities, because I knew I wanted to pursue property. And I know you're from London, but I had to go north. London would have been a bit too much for me.
No, look, I've got no loyalty towards London. I mean, yes, I've been raised here, but like my story, I had to move out of London to get started in Wales. So I'm more than aware that London is very expensive, and just the overall vibe here is a lot different to places outside of London. People are a lot more friendly, I find, up north or over in Wales. Especially like when you're just getting started, you're meeting estate agents, you're trying to meet landlords, and it just feels like they're a lot more open to the conversation outside of London, from my experience, and I'm sure you can agree with that as well.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's still scary. Estate agents still scare me today. I still hate picking up the phone and
Yeah,
asking.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that
it's
never
never
gets
fun.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, that's just part of it, isn't it? You know, you have to kinda get over that fear. I remember my first viewing, I couldn't even go in. I remember the first time. I remember, like, being outside the viewing, like, scared to go in, but
Oh,
plucked up the
same.
plucked up the confidence, got it done. They barely even looked at me, the landlord. I remember they didn't even barely even have a conversation with me. They just were pottering around, letting me view the place, and I was in and out of there in a couple minutes, and it was, so much better than I thought it would be in terms of, like, there wasn't anything bad that happened, you know?
Yeah, no one actually cares.
No
You're
one
just in
really
your own
cares.
head.
Yeah, exactly. It's your own brain playing tricks on you,
Yeah.
self-limiting beliefs and things like that. So, I guess what people would love to find out is, like, the initial challenges that you faced, and I think we can touch more on that, like, 'cause there is a lot of challenges, isn't there, with rejection and, you know, getting
Mm.
told no and things like that. So, any stories for us?
Well, yeah, actually, the first viewing that I went on in Manchester,
Mhm.
so I didn't really know the areas too well, and
Mhm.
I contacted this landlord on open rent.
Yeah.
And I was trying a few tactics because, some people you can be upfront with and say, "Yeah, it's for a company let," and then go for a viewing, and
Mhm.
there's no, like, hidden truths or anything. Or you can
Sure.
just ask for the viewing and then pitch. Everyone has their preference, and at
Mhm.
the time, I was trying just get the viewing and
Yeah.
pitch.
Yeah.
So I went to this apartment and I was, like, 5 minutes early, and she wasn't happy about that for starters, so that was the first, bad encounter.
Okay, off to a bad start.
Off to a bad start. And then once I was looking around and I was telling the landlord, what I'd be looking to, rent the property for, this
Mhm.
is my company, just very easy conversation.
Mhm.
She had her walls up and she said, "Oh, I've dealt with companies like you before who let it out to students." I was like, "Oh, no, we're not gonna be letting it out to students,
Mhm.
we take care of any maintenance." For example, if the door handle needed fixing, she was like, "You're not touching my door handles."
Oh
And I
god,
said and I was like, "Oh, no, I wasn't saying, I was just saying as an example of light maintenance."
yeah.
And then she just said, "Get out."
Oh god.
She ordered me out twice, and I was very calm and collected, but inside I was
Raging.
crying. No, I was because I was shaking because
Right,
I was
okay.
like, "I don't know where this is in Manchester, I'm new,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I don't know what's gonna happen to me."
Right.
And, so, yeah, I said, "I'm really sorry that we, couldn't take this conversation further. I'm sorry if I've
Mhm.
wasted your time. Have a lovely
Mhm.
rest of your day." I ran to the lift and got an Uber back home, and I didn't go on a viewing for another, like, 2 months after that.
That scarred you. I remember
No, it
speaking to you, I
did.
think.
It did, it really scarred me, and,
Mm.
the more I spoke to people about it, they said, "Oh, yeah, I've had bad experiences too, you've
Yeah.
just gotta carry on." And to be honest, I look back now and it's at the end of the day, I don't think it would have been a good property to take on anyway.
Mhm.
She wouldn't have been a great landlord to work with.
Mhm.
She would have been a pain, and it was just a lesson really to take rejection, and I had that very, very early on.
Yeah.
I got told no so many times, especially by estate agents. "No, no, it's our policy, we just don't do it." And the more I kept calling, I was kinda getting a bit fed up, so I was like, "You know what, let me instead of hanging up the phone, let me say, okay, well, why don't you?
Yeah.
Why don't you do this? Have you had a
Sure.
bad experience in the past?
Yeah.
Have you been burned by another company? Or, is it really your policy, or do you just not know anything about it?"
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that allowed me to have, more conversations with estate agents where I was able to actually
Mhm.
call them and say, "Hey, it's Jasmine again,"
Mhm. Me
and,
again.
yeah, exactly, and also I gotta remember they don't know me. I'm a
No.
voice over the phone, popped
Sure.
in maybe a few times, but they see so many people.
They do.
Yeah, and one thing that's helped, get over this, I don't know if you wanna call it imposter syndrome or, I'm embarrassed to go on
Mhm.
viewings or speak to people, is no
Mhm.
one knows you, so if you're gonna pretend to be confident and, like you know everything, then that's who they're gonna think you are.
That'll work.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I just fake it until I make it, and
Yeah.
the amount of people I've spoken to, and they've been like, "Oh, you're a natural, I've seen you at networking events and you speak so well." I'm like, "Oh, no, deep down, I'm terrified." Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's brilliant advice for people to hear. It's like everyone has fears and self-limiting beliefs, but I think, like you said, the imposter syndrome, it happens to us all. It happened to me, and I think it's just doing the thing anyway, you know?
Exactly, no one else is gonna pay your bills, and,
No.
you're trying to get to a certain point, and if you're going to not get there because of what, other people might think or how
Mhm.
you're perceived, then you're gonna find the rest of the journey very, very difficult,
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
sometimes you might embarrass yourself, sometimes you might see the wrong thing,
Yeah,
and you have to move on because,
yeah.
like I said, you might not ever see that person ever again. I mean, like the landlord that I met at the first
Mhm,
viewing in Manchester, I wouldn't
mhm.
know what she looked like if she walked past me in the street,
No.
and I'm
So
sure I'm the same in her mind. I'm sure she doesn't remember what I look like
yeah,
either,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. So it's just a fleeting moment that goes, and it's just doing the reps. And what I
Exactly.
think you're alluding to is your want to grow has to kinda outweigh your self-limiting beliefs basically in the beginning for sure.
And nothing's that deep either, If you
No.
make a fool of yourself, life moves on,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
People
Yeah.
with way bigger problems, and you just kinda have to think about that, and also, it helps when you have a mentor as well because
Mhm.
you kinda hear stories and where they're at now, like where you're at,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it wasn't easy, and
No.
it's nice hearing honest opinions, and, something that I kinda struggled with at the start was seeing so many people talk about the positives of
Yeah.
business, but
Yeah.
not show the growing pains and
Yeah.
the reality, and that's with my content especially,
Mhm.
that's what I show a lot more of. If
Mhm.
anything, I think it puts people off the business than people on it, 'cause
Well,
I don't know, it depends who the consumer is or who the viewer is.
exactly. Yeah, it depends who's looking.
Yeah,
I think, like you say, there are a lot of people, especially on social media, who do only show one side of the coin, right? And there are things that do go wrong. Um, but I think by showing the good and the bad, you're gonna still encourage people to wanna work with you because it's real, isn't it? It's
yeah,
you're being transparent and things don't always go your way. That's
exactly.
part of building any business. You're gonna get a lot of rejection, you're gonna get a lot of no's, but it's the perseverance and the person you become on that journey is what will ultimately define you, you know?
Exactly, and everything's exciting at the beginning.
Mhm,
I read this book, I think it's called The Dip,
mhm.
but it's where everything is really exciting at the beginning. Let's say the first month into the business, you've hit a high, and then,
Yeah,
you had your first rejection,
yeah,
and then you take a dip, and
yeah,
then it's really hard to get back up. So you're like,
yeah,
"Okay, I'm just gonna start another business. I'm gonna
yeah,
do drop shipping."
yeah,
And then it's the same thing again. "Oh,
yeah,
well, I can't, get a supplier."
yeah.
Everything it goes in circles, and
Mhm,
as soon as you get past the dip and realize that it is gonna get hard at some point, but
mhm.
then, in order to do the hard stuff, you're gonna reap the rewards and the benefits.
Yeah.
And I do think having faith as well is
Mhm.
it was crucial for me because I think without that, I would have given up a long time ago.
Definitely, definitely. Having faith in what you're doing for
Yeah,
sure. Having that support system, like mentoring your partner there, I
absolutely.
presume he's quite, supportive to you as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If I say I'm having a bad day, I'm not sure if I wanna go on a viewing or
Yeah,
contact the landlord.
yeah.
Tough love. Yeah.
We all have tough days, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, it really
exactly.
does help having that support system there for you, you know, it really does give you an advantage, I think, because we all have bad days, and it is nice to be able to bounce off of someone, if they've got a full charge of energy, maybe you're feeling a little bit drained, you can borrow some of theirs, you know?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I know when I first moved, I called you and I said, "Oh, I don't know if I'm doing the right things." And you said,
Mhm.
"You're doing all the right things. You just
Yeah.
need to do it again and
Yeah.
again."
Yeah.
And I was thinking, "Oh, there must be something that's
J
missing,
Yeah.
There's something that says must be something that I'm not doing. Otherwise,
Yeah.
why aren't I not getting,
Mhm.
you know, a unit? Or why aren't I
Mhm.
getting, a rent-to-rent deal?" And
Mhm.
you're like, "No, it's just reps."
It is. It
Yeah,
is
and that's
just
all it
that.
is.
It is simply just that, and I'd have a lot of conversations with people who get frustrated in the early days, you know, but it is just
Mm,
practice. It is just practice, practice, and reps. Yeah. That is
yeah,
basically what it is, doing the right stuff over and over again. And a lot of people in today's day and age do get shiny penny syndrome, and they start to look at different strategies, even just in the property world. Like there's other strategies, isn't there? Like deal
yeah,
sourcing and lease
loads.
options. There's loads, you know, and you could easily start thinking, oh, maybe I should go and do this. But the actual success comes from doing the same thing for a consistent period of time, doesn't it?
Exactly, just like the gym.
Yeah, yeah, just like the
Yeah,
gym, exactly the same. You know,
yeah,
some people go to the gym once a week and then wonder why they haven't got any gains. You know, it's like, well, dude, you need to like
exactly.
up
Yeah,
that
and
a bit more regular.
exactly, and I have to think as well, like, this time last year where, I think at my lowest in terms of faith, and
Mhm.
thinking, "Is this the right thing for me?"
Mhm.
If I had a deal back then, it wouldn't have been successful. Even though at the time
Mhm.
I was, I was angry, not really angry, but I was frustrated
Frustrated.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't got my first deal yet. And I look back now and I'm like, "Oh, girl, you weren't ready." That's
No, no.
so,
Yeah.
that is why, everything takes time and it's at the right time as well. Because
Yeah.
even though I thought I was ready,
He
I look
probably
back and I
wasn't.
wasn't. No,
No.
no, because everything is an experience, each viewing is an experience and people
Mhm.
you talk to as well, and things change,
Mhm.
trends change and you gotta keep up with that. And so, yeah, if I had anything to tell myself last year, then it would be like, "Just wait.
Yeah.
The
Just
right
wait.
right time will come, the right deal will come."
Yeah, it doesn't always happen on your time.
Mm,
It's gonna happen when it's right to happen, isn't it?
yeah, 100%. Even though I disagreed at the time, but
Yeah.
it
I
will
mean,
definitely come at the right
we're
time.
all like that, you know? I
Yeah,
thought I was gonna build a multi-million pound business in the first year, you know? We all have these goals to reach, and it
yeah,
doesn't always quite go like that, you know? The path is a little bit longer than we think in our head, but,
yeah.
I mean, it's worthwhile once you get there, isn't it? Once you get going.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, let's talk about this first deal then. I'd love to know a bit more about it and how it came about. Was it marketing from letters? Was it did you go deal sourcer? What happened with it and how did you get it?
Yeah, so I actually got this one via a deal sourcer, and
Mhm.
deal sourcer was always gonna be a last resort,
Yeah,
'cause I didn't wanna part with,
the
that money.
extra. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, that money was sitting in the bank and it was losing value and I needed to put it somewhere.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
at the moment, I'm also working on other property strategies as well. So I wanted to put some of my time towards that, but
Mhm.
it's hard to do that and then call landlords, agents, go on
Yeah,
viewings. It's very time consuming.
for
So if you're
sure.
only doing that, then great, go all in.
Mhm.
But because I'm doing something else as well, I needed to make sure I was making the most of my time and I had money
Mhm.
sitting there that needed to be used. So I was like, right, I'm gonna get a saucer.
Mhm.
And the criteria was to have something in Manchester.
Mhm.
I didn't get
Close
one in
by.
Manchester. I went north,
That's
north of
interesting
Manchester.
because my criteria was to get one in London originally, and I ended up 3 hours away in Wales, so yeah,
Yeah,
again, doesn't
it
always go to plan, does it?
not at all, and it was very typical actually because, before I worked with the deal sources,
Mhm.
there was loads of deals in Manchester, and then as soon as, I parted with the money, there was no deals in Manchester, and not just from them, it was through, you know, the network
Mhm.
of deal sources. I wasn't hearing anything.
Mhm.
And so it was getting to the 2 or 3 month mark where, I could get my money back. And at that time, I was thinking, oh, is this God trying to tell me, look, rent to rent isn't for you? Or is this just to tell me to carry on a bit further,
Mhm. Mhm.
persevere? So they came back with a deal in Leeds. I've never been to Leeds before until the viewing.
Okay.
So I really liked the flat. The numbers looked really good. The rent was
Mhm.
low, a lot lower than Manchester.
Mhm.
Happy days. So I got on the
Mhm.
train, went to Leeds, and I was a bit apprehensive because, if I'm being honest, I didn't know anything about Leeds. So I didn't
Of
think,
course. Mm,
I didn't know what it was going to be like
yeah.
or nothing. And it was a really, really nice city. Sort of similar to Manchester, and the
Mhm.
flat was really, really nice, and the
Mhm.
agent was really, really nice as well. And I hadn't
Good.
had too many, I guess, successful conversations with agents here. So I guess to speak to someone who was open to a company like that was really refreshing.
For sure, yeah, for sure.
And also I did some research in the city as well. So I spoke to strangers, I spoke to people who lived in the building as well
Mhm.
to get their
Mhm.
opinion.
Mhm.
And
Good.
everything was looking positive. So we went from there. And funny enough, as soon as I got that deal, a Manchester deal popped up.
Ah, blockbuster.
Yeah. So, yeah, I do operate in Leeds. I do hope to get something in Manchester at some point, but, at the moment, because so many people are moving to Manchester, especially
Mhm.
from London, the costs are
Mhm.
going up, so
Of
it'll only
course.
happen if it makes sense, but,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a one-bedroom that I've
Mhm.
that I've got, and,
Mhm.
my main guests are international students and business
Great.
travelers. At
Great.
the moment, I've just, secured a 5-week booking with a contractor.
Fantastic. We love
So,
contractors.
oh, yeah, absolutely. So he actually stayed a couple of weeks ago, and
Mhm.
I have an automated message that's, asked how
Mhm.
everything is,
Sure.
and, he said, "Oh, it's so good that I want to extend my stay, but I see you're already booked up for the whole of October."
Nice.
And he said, so I've actually booked another apartment in the same building.
Mhm.
Maybe we could have a conversation next week because I've
Mhm.
got a project that's on until December, Christmas.
Mhm.
And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I didn't hear from him. So I chased him up. I said, hey,
Mhm.
how's it
Good.
going? I know you've
Follow
got
up.
a project. And he said, yeah, the only thing is my company has a budget that's slightly below what I can see is on your calendar. I didn't want to
Mhm.
waste your time. I
No.
said, okay, well, let's have a conversation and see
Mhm.
what we can do. It's Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
It's, December is sort of a quiet time anyway.
Sure.
Going and also he's not going to be staying on the weekends, and mainly
Brilliant.
the weekends are the busy time.
Yeah.
So we've had a conversation. I was able to work out a deal with him,
Mhm.
and he's just booked 5 weeks, Monday to Friday,
Fantastic.
up until a couple of weeks before December. Not
Brilliant.
December, Christmas.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you wanna hear, because having that conversation and being open to negotiation is how you get those deals over the line. You know, a lot of people
Mm,
might have been sort of, ignorant and been like, "Nope, this is the price, I can't budge."
mm,
But in rent to rent, I find if you can fill a unit in that sort of 5 week, 6 week period, then it definitely frees up your time to, like, if you're focusing on other things as well, other property strategies as well and other things going on, it gives you an advantage. It's relatively passive once they're in there, isn't it?
exactly. And it wasn't an easy decision if, as easy as it sounds, in a sense, like someone wants to book for 5 weeks, it was
Mhm,
at a slight cut. So I did ask
mhm.
the group,
Of
and
course.
that was really, really helpful because it just
Yeah,
put in perspective.
yeah,
Look, Monday to Friday, how busy are you?
yeah.
And because, I haven't had a unit before, so I don't know how December usually is.
Sure, it
It
does
was
get
helpful
quiet.
to have that feedback from the group, to be honest, because
Yeah, yeah,
ultimately I made my decision.
yeah,
And, now I've got a contractor that I work with. Maybe he recommends me to his company.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I have to say, with the automated messages, my customer service is very, very good. That is what I get
I
5
can
stars on.
imagine. I can
Yeah,
imagine. I can imagine you'd be very good at that, and that's almost the advantage of starting out as well, and just being in rent to rent in general. When you've got 1 to 5 units, even 1 to 10 to a certain extent, you can be really personal with the service
yeah,
on both ends. So, like, tenants, guest management, but also with the landlords as well, or the agents. You can really give that personal service to them and speak to them on WhatsApp. You can answer the phone at most hours, relatively.
absolutely.
Um, and I think that gives you an advantage in the marketplace because you're a bit more specialized and you care a bit more.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
they're
Yeah,
not just like a number. They are actually like one of your clients that you're gonna look after and try and fulfill what you've aimed to do. So
exactly. And at the moment, I've got 2 international students staying for 16 days, 16
mhm,
nights. So
mhm,
that was amazing. I love
yeah,
the long-term bookings through September and October. I had a 15-night booking in
mhm,
September and 16-night booking in October,
mhm,
and it was like the 2nd of October that came through, and I wasn't sure how I was gonna fill it,
mhm,
and then before you know it, I had a request on Airbnb, 16
yeah,
nights.
yeah.
It all came through, and now I think we're looking at 90% occupancy for this month as well. So
That's
that's for
brilliant.
September and October.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive, I must say, because the average, I'd say, 70% is what we kinda teach, isn't it? Like, in terms of
Yeah,
the benchmark for
yeah.
a decent SA unit, sort of 70% occupancy, but to get 90 is fantastic. That's great work for the
Yeah,
for the
I'm
first
super
couple
happy
months.
with it.
Yeah, you should be. I think it sounds like you've made a really good choice there, a really good decision. Um, so what's the plans then going forward then? So are you gonna look at take on more units in the new year, or what's the next steps for you in your business?
I would love to take on more units, and I would love to venture, overseas as well, because the
Mhm,
market in Mexico,
mhm.
it performs amazing, and
Yeah,
I know someone who operates there, so, maybe it's an option to co-host,
yeah, yeah.
so I do wanna look into that. I
That
really do wanna
sounds
grow my portfolio up
Mhm.
to, well, who knows? I think 10 would be great, 5 next year would be great, but at the
Yeah,
moment, I'm just trying to recoup the cash that I've
of
invested
course,
in this deal. So it's
of
gonna
course.
to be transparent, it's gonna take a little while until I can invest in another deal
Mhm.
unless I get, like a long-term booking that I can
Yeah,
get the cash from and then invest that quickly into something
yeah.
else.
Yeah,
That would
yeah,
be ideal, and that's what I am hoping and praying for, the cash to come through for a long-term booking
mhm.
direct, and then I can just quickly put that into something else.
Yeah, that's the game. That's the game,
That's the game, exactly.
I think that's very possible. We've had that happen a few times, and the amount of people looking for that type of accommodation versus how much stock is actually available for them, that it's very likely that that could happen if you keep marketing on the right platforms and you
Yeah.
keep your amazing levels of customer service high.
Mhm. Mhm.
Then that'd be great if that could happen. Then you just roll that on into the next deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think going forward, I might wanna do houses. If it
Mhm.
was an apartment, I think it would definitely need to be definitely at least 2 bed, because with a 1 bed, I'm finding the profit margins aren't as good as they could be. Obviously, with a
Yeah,
house, your occupancy levels might be lower, like 45%, but your
yeah,
nightly rate is gonna be crazy. It could be
yeah,
2, 3, 4, 500, especially if it's a country house.
yeah.
And so I think that's a bit scarier because 'cause you've got more costs,
Overheads, yeah,
overheads, but I think that would reap, more rewards.
for
So, yeah, I
sure.
think going forward, I don't think I would do a one bed again because we're trying to make money,
Mhm.
and, you know, I
Yeah,
think
but
that's what, but
I
for my
mean,
first one,
for your
it's just
first
great.
one, it's perfect. It's like, you wanna lay the first brick well, and you don't wanna overstretch yourself on the first one. So we've got loads of students that have taken on a one bed to start off with, and it's worked
Yeah,
out great for them, and then you build and grow from there.
yeah,
But
get that
you
super host
Yeah, get the
rating.
super host, you cut your teeth on those ones, you learn the way. I mean,
Yeah,
like, you learn so much from just being in the game, don't you? Like, I think once you start marketing and you see the messages coming in, it can be quite overwhelming, but it's definitely reassuring when you see that people are like really your product's in demand.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
nice feeling. It gives you that
yeah.
extra bit of confidence to know, okay, no, this really does work.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the notification that an Airbnb booking or just uplisting
Yeah,
is my favorite notification.
I'd say it's up there. It was up there with mine. I had to turn it off at one point because I was getting a bit too
Oh, I love that.
I
I love
needed
that.
it too much. Like the dopamine hit when it comes through. It was like, okay, I need to
Yeah,
like
yeah, exactly. But
concentrate
I've
on it.
also I'm at the point where I'm checking my business phone, and, I have, like, a sigh of relief when I haven't got any text messages or anything, because no one's got problems then.
Right. Yes.
So
Good. No
I'm
news
like,
is good news.
yeah, so I'm like, "Oh, phew, no problems." And to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
fair, it has been really, really good so far. No one's had anything to complain about, and yeah, just pray that continues, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, love the bookings coming through. It's just such a great feeling.
It's the best. It's the best.
Yeah.
And then like what you want to be doing is sort of remarketing to those guests, like you said, the guy that came and he had a nice time and people want to stay again and recommendations and all that sort of stuff. That's how you grow and get more customers coming in direct in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and, there's an incentive there as well. I always send my guests a discount code to
Mhm.
book directly with me next time.
Nice. Yeah.
So, if they are in the city again, then, it's a really nice incentive, know that they can come here at a cheaper rate and they know the area then.
Yeah, yeah, and they know they're gonna be
Mm,
looked after by yourself. So, I mean, it's
exactly.
it's it's a win-win. They're gonna spend a lot more in a hotel, for example, aren't they? They're not gonna get anywhere near the level of accommodation that they get in a hotel with you. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and there's many things I'd love to add to the unit, but I
mhm.
think you'll be forever adding to it,
Yeah,
and it'll still never be good enough, you know,
yeah.
and one of the reviews I had actually said it was a show home, and I remember leaving it going, "Yeah, this is not a nice unit."
Mhm.
'Cause
And that's a
I've
compliment
got
then.
yeah, it's a compliment, so if they love it, then I'm happy, but I know where I wanna be with it,
Mhm.
but then I know that I'm a perfectionist, that I'm gonna keep adding, and it would
Yeah,
never have been listed then
yeah,
if
yeah,
that was the
sure.
case. You
Yeah,
just need the basics in there and, get a good colorway, and then you're good. Like, you don't
yeah.
actually need too much to be a
No,
to be a good unit. As long as your customer
no.
service is good, you've got all of the necessities, it's in a good location, most likely it will sell itself.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think that's great. That's great to learn. Like I always
Mm.
knew when I was looking at your Instagram and stuff when you first started that your aesthetic and the way you design and stuff
Thank
when you
you.
do get your first deal would always be really good. I
Thank
remember
you.
saying to you that I can't wait till you get your first deal because I
Yeah.
know it's gonna look so nice.
I screenshotted that message as well because it was always, like, something that I'd look back on and go, "Yeah, I am gonna get it one day,"
Mhm.
and you always said, "Oh, any day now, like, you can feel it."
Yeah, because I
Um,
know when people are close. It's normally when they're like really frustrated and they're right over
'Cause
that
they're
hill.
passionate.
Yeah,
Yeah, they care, like, I cared enough, and yeah,
Yeah,
it was
that's
very
good.
frustrating, but, funny enough, I haven't been on my content as much as I should be just because 'cause I've been so busy.
Mhm.
But it is
That
something that I
happens.
need to get back on because, yeah, I love my content, so I
Yeah,
need
no,
to get back on it.
you're very good at it, and I think that,
Thank
like I
you.
said to you before in our messages, I think that, there'll be a lot of young ladies that will be inspired by your story. That's why we've got you on today.
Thank you.
There'll be a lot of young ladies and men as well that will be inspired by
Cool.
your story, and they'll think, "Well, if Jazz can do it, I can do it as well." So, because you've always had that attitude, like, of, "This is going to work." Even though those days when you were frustrated, I remember speaking to you, and there's, like, 2 different types of mentees that we have. There's people that are a little bit more apprehensive, and they're not 100% sure if it will work, and they're sort of dabbling in it, and they're putting one foot in and testing the
Mm.
water, so to speak. But you was always quite determined, and it was like, "No, Luke, this needs to work. Like, this
Oh,
is
yeah.
going to work."
It's
And
gonna work.
that type of mindset is what gets the job done. Similar
Yeah.
to myself when I started it, it wasn't like, I'm going to give this a go. It was like, okay, no, I'm going to make this work one way or another.
Absolutely, because it's a risk either way, in my
Hmm.
opinion. It's a risk to
Yeah.
stay in the current situation, and also, if it didn't work, which I knew it was always gonna work, but let's
Hmm.
say if it didn't work, what's the
Hmm.
worst that could happen? I just go back to my current situation that
Yeah.
I've been doing, that people choose to do
Their
for
whole
life.
life. Yeah.
So that's the worst that could happen.
Yeah, that's the worst case
So
scenario, is you carry on doing what most people do for until they're 67. That
exactly.
doesn't seem that bad.
Exactly, and so for me, it was definitely worth the risk.
Mhm,
I've got a very, like, entrepreneurial mindset, like,
mhm.
to be doing big things, and having a 9 to 5 doesn't really fit that
No, no,
fit that
no.
lifestyle, and yeah, you have to take the risk because either way, it's a risk.
Yeah,
Staying in your current situation will be a risk. You'll just realize years later, that's all.
yeah, yeah. No, it's very good that you've realized that about yourself, and I think there are probably a lot more entrepreneurs in the sort of 9 to 5 space that are maybe frustrated, unhappy,
Mm,
um, and they may not have the courage to step out of it and actually try something for themselves. But you have to have that sort of self-talk, and you have to understand yourself as well. And I think a character like yours would end up being even more frustrated and annoyed
yeah,
in that structure of 9 to 5 constantly for the next 40 years. It can be a
yeah,
bit stifling for minds like ours.
yeah, exactly, and I'm still in my 9 to 5 now, and I'm grateful that I've got it to, fund the life that I'm living
Of
now while I
course,
have my business.
of
But then
course.
at some point, the goal is that the business overtakes the 9 to 5,
Yeah.
and I don't need that
No,
crutch anymore, like, and
no.
I can just rely on the business.
Yeah. You'll get
Um,
there.
yeah, exactly, and I've actually learned not to put a time frame on it exactly. Like, yeah, of course, I've got goals for the year,
Mhm.
but I also had goals last year that was, have 5 rent-to-rents and things like that. As long as the steps remain the same, I'm not gonna put too much pressure on, "Okay, well, I
No.
have to have this done," because I think the most important thing is that I'm hitting the steps,
Yeah.
and as long as I'm doing that, I'm getting closer either way, not to get mad at myself if I didn't achieve that thing. As
No.
long as I've done the steps, I'm way ahead than where I was last year.
Oh, yeah, you've come a long, long way for sure. And yeah, if you keep doing the right things, it's only a matter of time, isn't it? Until
Yeah,
you get until you
exactly.
get to that point. And just when you've got a bit of money coming in from your own business, it can be so empowering. It's like
Mm,
you can go
who am
into
I?
work. Yeah, you can go into work like, okay, it's not the be all and end all me being here. Like, I've got a route out.
Yeah,
And so many people would love to have that, but they just don't. They just don't take the leap.
exactly, exactly, and everyone wishes, I can't remember the saying actually, but you're living someone else's dream right now, so even
Yeah,
if
for
you're not
sure.
where you want to be,
Yeah,
someone still wants to be where you are. You're
for
still
sure.
living someone else's dream, so you've just
Yeah,
gotta remember that and be grateful for where you are as well.
yeah.
But yeah, I'd say as long as you're ticking those boxes,
Mhm.
there's no way that you can fail really. It's just reps.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's great advice. So moving on, that would be a great segue into the next question, which would be, any advice for beginners? Like, I guess your old self 2 years ago, what would you say? I mean, you've kind of touched on a couple points, but someone who lacked the confidence, they may not have a lot of capital to get started. They're a bit apprehensive about the whole thing, but they feel in their heart that they are an entrepreneur and they want to start their own rent-to-rent business. What advice would you have for that type of person, you know?
100% get a mentor,
Yeah.
because even if, you know, the mentor is 500, £1,000, £2,000, whatever,
Mhm.
it's going to cost a lot more to fix the mistakes that you may make, because
Mhm.
not all the mentors online are going to share everything.
No.
Okay. And even it can be really detrimental to the business if
Mhm.
you don't get the right education.
Yeah.
And you see it all the time, where people think that they can just learn off YouTube and do it themselves, and, you know, it's just Airbnb. What could be so
Yeah.
difficult? And then they get
Exactly.
into a bad lease, or maybe there's, you
Mhm.
know, something wrong with the unit, and
Mhm.
they find themselves then getting a mentor, or having to, you know, bring a partner on in the business, and
Yeah.
it's very costly mistakes. I'd say the first thing to do is get a mentor, even if it is a bit expensive at first. That
Mhm.
really shows that you're taking it seriously and you're
Yeah.
investing in yourself, because if you're not
For
willing to get a
sure.
mentor to teach you,
Yeah.
then are you really serious about the business?
Yeah. I think that's great advice, you know, like having that someone there to hold you accountable and bounce ideas
Yeah.
off, and like you said, not take that wrong first step, because that can be so detrimental to the business. Like you say, there are so many people who do just try and rush, and they think they can just watch YouTube and then go
Yeah.
out and get deals, and they end up, you know, taking on something that isn't really
Oh,
anything that's going to make any money.
yeah. Sorry, my camera came off.
That's all right.
Um,
That's all right.
oh, we're back to low quality camera.
That's all right. I can't tell the difference. Look, it still
Oh,
look the
good.
same to me. Um, so yeah, no, so many people do lay that first brick wrong.
Mm,
And I think having that support system, you know, having a mentor there, having a group, like a community, like the
mm.
guys in the WhatsApp group, you can bounce ideas off and even analyze deals together and get second opinion. I think that's crucial for building a solid foundation for your business,
Yeah,
definitely.
because it can be lonely as well. Like, it's
Oh,
just
it's a
me in this
lonely
business.
journey. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and, you know, it's just me in this business, and don't get me wrong, you know, my partner's a business owner as well, you know, there's been business owners around me, but there's not anyone doing what I do. If I
Yeah.
didn't have groups, then
Mhm.
I would find it very difficult. You know, even the
Mhm.
other day I asked a question in the group. You
Mhm.
know, I'm always going to have questions. Everyone
Yeah.
will always have a question that they don't know, and that's why it really helps to bounce ideas.
Yeah.
And it just saves you from making mistakes, really. So anyone who's just starting out, especially if they haven't got the confidence, definitely get a mentor, because it just takes a lot of the stress off, knowing that someone is with you every step of the way to tell you
Mhm.
what's right, what's wrong, you know, what contracts to use, because it's very scary. Like,
Yeah.
especially
It
if you're
is.
young starting out as well.
Of course, yeah, you're taking on someone's house, like, you're guaranteeing them a rent. It's a daunting thing to do, like, it's money coming out of your pocket into someone else's without
Mhm.
knowing guaranteed that you're gonna get tenants or guests. It's a
Yeah,
daunting thing when you don't know anything about it, for sure.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, that's the biggest piece of advice I could give. And
Yeah,
just, yeah, back yourself as well, because if you can't back yourself, you're going to find it very difficult,
yeah.
because like I said, it is very lonely unless you've got a business partner.
Mhm.
Then, you know, you're going to find it very difficult, because you've got to do the admin, you got to do viewings, you've got to do the
Yeah,
whole setup of the unit. It's a lot for one person. So
yeah, it is.
just, you know,
It is.
remember your why, and yeah, definitely keep the faith, because I think without it, I definitely would have struggled, and I wouldn't be where I am now, to be honest. You know,
No.
faith definitely got me where I am.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant advice to anyone listening. Um, finally, then, I guess, where would people see your best content? I know you said you've been slacking recently, but I know you're gonna pick up on that.
Well, I actually put my handle as my name on here. So it is
Mhm.
Properties by Jasmine is my properties page, where I show everything personal growth, everything property, really. So that
Yeah,
is where you'll find me.
on Instagram and TikTok, aren't you?
I am on TikTok. I just need to remember my TikTok handle, actually. So bear with me.
No rush, no rush. We're not going anywhere.
Okay, so my TikTok handle is jasmine.maddocklion.
Okay, cool.
And that is mainly, well, I'm doing a series at the moment, and it's
Mhm.
called Transitioning from a 9 to 5 Girl to a Businesswoman. So really,
Love
I'm
that.
just showing all the rawness of business ownership and
Mhm.
entrepreneurship, and just I'm not painting a pretty picture of it. I'm just being
It's
really,
not
really
pretty though,
honest.
is it?
Because it's not pretty, you know. I'm managing a 9 to 5, but then
Mhm.
my cleaner's calling me up saying that a guest has made a mess. I'm
Sure,
sharing the whole story because not many
sure.
people do show that side. They show,
No.
you know, the glitz and glamour side, and then
Mhm,
they try and, you know, show you the growth side, but it's hard to
mhm.
relate to that. So I'm
Sure,
taking you through real time. So that's mainly
sure.
what's on my TikTok.
I love that. I think that's a brilliant concept, showing people the real stuff, um, giving the transparent view of how things actually go, I think is great.
Yeah,
And I think there's
absolutely.
so many people who wanna transition from that, the 9 to 5
Mm,
into their own business, so I'm sure you will be inspiring many.
thank you. That's the hope.
Well, thanks for coming on today. Really enjoyed catching up with you and finding out what's occurring.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been on my bucket list this year, so
Yeah,
it's a really nice moment to be on here.
it's quite full circle, isn't it? Because I
It
remember
is
when we first spoke and you was like, "Right, I'm definitely coming on there once I get my first deal," and I was like, "Yeah,
100%.
we'd love to have you on."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now fast forward, here we are.
I know. I was just having a moment before I logged on. I was like,
Mm,
"Oh, I wanted this all year, and now it's here."
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
thank you for having me on.
Well, you've been brilliant. You've taken it in your stride. So, yeah, I've really enjoyed having you on. And
Thank you.
look out for the interview on YouTube, and it will be on
Mhm.
Spotify and all those other good platforms as well.
Amazing. Thank you
So
so much.
I'll let you enjoy the rest of your Sunday,
Okay, thank you. And you.
and I'm sure we will speak in the group at some point this week.
Oh, definitely. I'll keep you guys updated.
Yeah, please do. Keep smashing it, Jazz, and we'll speak soon. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Luke. See
Yeah.
you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.